Okay, I'm Major Tanaka from HPD's Traffic Division. Thank you for coming out today to join me. I'm going to be discussing two of the collisions that occurred yesterday. I'll begin with the one that happened in the Makiki area on the H1 freeway going eastbound. Okay, on Thursday, August 3rd, 2023, at approximately 10:21 hours, a vehicle was traveling eastbound on the H1 freeway in the number 3 lane, which sustained a rear flat tire. The second vehicle, traveling in the same lane, stopped behind the first vehicle. A third vehicle, also traveling in the same lane, ended up rear-ending the second vehicle, causing that second vehicle to veer into the nearest left lane. That third vehicle continued in the same lane and rear-ended the first vehicle. The driver was the only occupant of the third vehicle. It was a 23-year-old male driver. The second vehicle had a total of 4 occupants. There was a 38-year-old male driver and a 38-year-old female front passenger. And the second vehicle, and the first vehicle that sustained the flat tire had 2 occupants, a 37-year-old male driver and a 39-year-old female front seat passenger. As a result of the collision, all occupants of the first and second vehicles were transported to an area hospital for treatment. The 23-year-old male, the third vehicle, remained at the scene. And at this time, speed, drugs, or alcohol do not appear to be factors in this collision, and it's an ongoing investigation. Yes, to clarify that. No fatalities from that, just critical type injuries.
Was it too late for the third driver to press on his brakes? Because he rear-ended the third driver at the time?
Yes. I don't know what would cause the driver at the time not to be able to stop, to be able to collide into that second vehicle, and then again collide into that first vehicle, but it's still under investigation at this time. Okay, so I'm going to move over to the second collision that happened in the Aiea area. On August 3rd, 2023, at around 3:18 p.m., there was a motor vehicle collision involving 4 vehicles that occurred in the area of the H1 freeway eastbound near the Ka'anohi Street overpass. It was reported to the Honolulu Police Department Traffic Vehicular Homicide Section that the 34-year-old male motorist was traveling eastbound on the H1 freeway when he rear-ended an 81-year-old female motorist and her 85-year-old male passenger. As a result of the initial collision, the 81-year-old female motorist spun out and traveled across multiple lanes of traffic and was then broadsided by a 22-year-old male motorist who was also traveling eastbound. The 22-year-old male motorist then collided with a 4th vehicle operated by a 57-year-old female motorist. As a result of the collision, the 81-year-old female motorist and her 85-year-old male passenger were both taken to an area hospital in critical condition, and sadly, they both later succumbed to their injuries. The 22-year-old male motorist was taken to an area hospital in serious condition. The preliminary investigation shows that the 81-year-old female motorist and the 85-year-old male passenger were wearing their seatbelts at the time of the collision. At this time, speed, drugs, or alcohol do not appear to be factors in this collision. And these two deaths were the 29th and the 30th fatality of the year, as compared to 26 fatalities at the same time last year. Yes. Right now, it's still under investigation, so it's still early in the investigation to determine that.
Okay, speeding, drugs, or alcohol is not a factor if a 34-year-old driver distracted driving on his phone.
Well, we don't know at this time exactly why that would cause that driver to rear-end that other motorist. But if you, with process of elimination, you know, if you're not speeding, if you're not, if you're driving at a, you know, regular speed, what else is there to conclude that would cause you to hit another car and not brake in time? But we're still investigating that.
Are you able to identify
We have identified all motorists that were involved in the collision. As far as identifying anybody as a suspect, we will determine that depending on what our investigation pans out to be.
How does it make you feel seeing that there's more fatalities this time around versus last year? Traffic fatalities.
Yes. In any given year, as you know, fatalities, you know, it goes up and down. So right now we are seeing, you know, there's an increase as compared to last year, but my point is that the year isn't over yet. So if we're lucky, and we don't get any more fatalities during the rest of the year, then obviously we will be lower than what we had last year. So I'd like to think of the statistics as just taking snapshots within a time period and not focusing too much on what we have this year than last year. And then the only time you can go apples to apples comparisons if you have a full year that's completed and comparing it to a previous year that has been completed.
What is HPD's message to drivers out there to make sure we don't surpass last year's numbers?
That's a good question. One thing I would say is always obey the speed limits. Try not to get behind the wheel impaired. Also, be aware of your surroundings. Just drive with aloha. I mean, we share the road with our friends, our family, co-workers. So the decisions that you make when you drive, these are all things that affect others on the roadway. Again, keep safe distances, especially on the freeway between other cars, which would allow reaction time in case you need to take evasive actions for whatever reason. So that's something that I highly encourage. I mean, nobody likes to be tailgated, right? So just be mindful of that when you're driving too.
Some people, this may be just anecdotal, but some people are saying they feel like there's a lot more aggression at these roads today, or or there's a lot more speeding going on. And so I just wondered if your officers are finding when you're patrolling, if any of this is the case, more aggression, more speeding.
I think for the most part, people will react to what they see. If we drive with aloha, try to drive with respect to everybody out there, you tend to get that respect back. I think that goes a long way as far as trying to mitigate aggression out there on the roadways. I know that for myself, I like to wave to people like as a thank you. I think that goes a long way too. As far as speeding, I can say certainly for our motorcycle accidents, our fatalities, speeding was a large contributing factor. So if you're on a motorcycle, please mind your speeds, ride within your limits, and of course, be aware of your surroundings.
Do
I would have to look at those statistics to determine that.
Were there any signs of road rage that led to the crash on the H1?
Right now, because it's still under investigation, we still need to investigate that. There's witnesses that we still need to speak to determine if that was or was not a factor.
And what types of cars were the people involved in that crash driving? Like the 34-year-old, what type of car did he have? And then the couple, what type of car did they have?
You know, I don't know the type of cars offhand. Okay, and as a reminder, August is considered Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month, as you all know. So HPD is partnering with our outside agencies, and it's a statewide initiative that we're happy to be part of the initiative. So I just like to remind everyone, especially because of the schools going back into session in the next couple of weeks, that there are going to be obviously a lot more pedestrians on the roadways. So if you're a pedestrian, please, when you use crosswalks, obey the traffic signals. Always, of course, look both ways before you cross the street, but always assume that the car does not see you. Never assume that they know that you're there. So, and be vigilant until you get to the other side of the roadway. For cars, again, because of the increased pedestrian traffic, we urge everyone to be mindful. And the best thing I can say is for our vehicles, for drivers, to expect pedestrians to be out there. So there's no surprises if like a little kid darts out in front of a car. You're already expecting something to happen, so you're not caught by surprise. Also, drive within the speed limits, and just be, again, mindful of your surroundings, especially in school zone, and also not only in school zones, but I also want to put it out there, also in construction zones, because we have a lot of construction workers out there who are in harm's way out on the roadways doing their jobs. So I also want to urge the public to be aware of these workers who are out there, and to give them space when they're passing, and also to be aware of their safety also. Because of the August Pedestrian Awareness Month, we will be doing island-wide initiatives for enforcement of pedestrian violations, and also education. So educating the public of pedestrian safety. In the mornings, normally it'll be, we have a regular rush hour traffic, so typically to around 8 o'clock is the normal time that there's the most traffic, and typically in the afternoon from around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But again, please use common sense if you're around a school district. Again, if you're in a construction zone area, please use common sense. There's going to be added pedestrians on the roadway, people working on the roadway. Just be aware of your surroundings and adjust your driving accordingly. Okay, thank you.
And that was Major Tanaka of HPD's Traffic Division giving us details about these critical and, fatal crashes that happened on the H1 freeway yesterday. First off, I wanted to start with the Makiki crash that we learned some details about. And Dylan, if you could give us some information that we've learned from there, and we have video of that crash as well. So, yeah, if you could share that information.
Let's go ahead. Yes, and this was the Makiki crash near University of Hawaii there. We do know multiple people were seriously injured in this case. Major Tanaka talked about this before yesterday's fatal in the Kahanohi Aiea area. We do know at least I think it was 4. I have to double check the notes on my end, but people were listed in serious condition there. But the good news out of this crash was that no one died here. Of course, you heard HPD provide those traffic safety tips and to remind drivers, just be safe on the road. But of course, the big crash that happened yesterday, that was out of the Aiea area right by the Kaonohi overpass. That one unfortunately led to the deaths of 2 elderly people. Take a look at the images from that scene. Honolulu police have released their findings from their preliminary investigation, and they said that this happened around 3:18 yesterday afternoon. This involved a total of 4 vehicles. A 34-year-old man was heading eastbound on the H1 freeway, and police say that's when he rear-ended the vehicle carrying an 81-year-old woman who was behind the wheel and an 85-year-old man who was her passenger. Police say she spun out and then was broadsided by another driver, a 22-year-old man who was also heading east, and as a result of that collision, another vehicle was involved. A 22-year-old man was in serious condition. The 2 in their 80s were unfortunately taken to the hospital in critical condition, where they later died. This marks Oahu's 29th and 30th traffic fatality of this year. And this is some images from yesterday that you're looking at. The townbound traffic was absolutely snarled for hours.
I mean, as you can see, those were images from our traffic camera of just immense gridlock on the H1 freeway, and this was at the time like 3:18, 3:15 around, which is when it's rush hour traffic. You know, people are getting off work during that time, and even when I left work at 6:30 around there, I was heading back to Mililani, and it was still really backed up until, you know, the YPO exit by Costco.
Yeah, I was on the road in the 7 o'clock hour, and there were still so many cars trying to go townbound. We know a lot of people probably just decided to wait it out. They had nowhere to go on the freeways there. Another thing that's interesting to note is that Honolulu police have not yet ruled out road rage as a possible factor on this. They did say it is under investigation right now. So essentially they're keeping an open eye on any possible cause. But they have previously told us that speed, drugs, and alcohol do not appear to be apparent factors in this. And they essentially just want drivers to be aware on the roads and share the roads and drive with aloha, especially because August is Pedestrian Safety Month.
Yes, Pedestrian Safety Month. And, you know, he also brought up, you know, it's almost back to school time again. So, you know, for drivers, they're really urging them to slow down, be vigilant, and always be aware of your surroundings, because you never know, if he mentioned, if a kid might jump out, you know, to cross the road to go to school, or even just playing on the street. So really just vigilance is important. And we're definitely going to have more information on the fatal H1 crash with our reporters working to gather a story on that. And we'll have that in our later editions of Hawaii News Now.
We also want to note that Honolulu police say they will be stepping up their enforcement of the pedestrian traffic laws, and all this month, in conjunction with pedestrian safety, they will be out in force, making sure drivers stop at crosswalks for pedestrians and are just following the rules out there. And of course, back to school is next week. We do know that there'll be a lot more students out on sidewalks and in neighborhoods, and we want drivers to be aware of that as well.
Yes, and thank you so much for tuning in to this press conference that we brought to you live. This is Emily Cristobal.
And I'm Dylan Ancheta.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.